Good morning, Brandeis. This is a virtual staff meeting. We decided that this would be the easiest way to reach out to you rather than create a Zoom meeting last minute that you needed to show up for at 8 o'clock. So instead, we decided to do this video to explain the new district's grading expectations for distance learning, and also just to reach out to you and say hello sort of in person. So we hope you're doing well. I know I speak for our admin staff when we say we miss you, and we've been thinking about you, and we've been seeing all the incredible things that you've been doing online with our students, getting them connected, reaching out to them, and making them feel like home again. So we want to say thank you for that first off. I'm going to send in this email, the expectations are attached that the district has sent out, and it has a calendar on it. We're going to start by talking about these guiding considerations and the core beliefs that the district followed when creating these expectations. And then I just wanted to talk to you about a little scenario that even at Brandeis, right, we're struggling to get our students connected. And even if they have a device, they are sharing it with their siblings at home, and so they don't have easy access. Some of them are have no access at all, so we're trying to work around that. We thought maybe a week would give us time to get there as a district, but we're still not there. I think a lot of you have figured that out as you're filling out Jenna's form, trying to get our kids' names out there so that our call team can start to reach out to them and let them know that we're here and that they need to do school. So I thought we'll start with the guiding considerations. Really what this is that this is new for everybody, right? So when we start to talk about grading, we have to keep in mind that it's new for teachers, it's new for students, it's new for families to help to manage this. And so we want to keep that in mind as before we start reading what the guidelines are. The core beliefs were three that I was fortunate enough to sit on this team and listen. So the core beliefs are that grades always represent mastery. Practices don't widen opportunity gaps, and that's the greatest concern I think that I have, is that what we're doing could potentially widen an opportunity gap for a kid that can't get online or listen to grade what the teaching is. And the last one is that students won't be penalized. So that one's a hard one. We don't want to penalize students, but once we start to assign grades, that could happen. So we're going to do everything we can to make sure that we don't give them too much, and that students can be successful no matter how many times it takes or at what point during this distance learning they are successful. So we're going to really focus on our grades looking like mastery grades. And I have some suggestions for that. I added it into your email, and you can read that first chapter of Grading Smarter, Not Harder. That has a lot to do with grading for mastery and what that looks like in the grade book. I want to first say that our grade book is not going to look like it ever did before. We used to have 12 grades, and that is not the case, especially this 5th 6 weeks, since we have not been in school technically for 3 weeks, right? This week did not count for grades. Last week did not count for grades. And the week before that was spring break. So we have about a week of grades that we went into, maybe because that week before spring break, I know we had a lot of absences. I'm going to permission you to drop those grades out if you have too many to make up, or it's not possible for students to make it up, or you may excuse students who didn't get it turned in. But we're not going to let those grades count against them. So with that being said, we're going to go to that calendar that was shared with you. And we're going to go through the district's expectations for what they're asking for us week by week. And I'm just going to pull that up on my screen. I'm learning technology too. All right, so March 2nd through the 6th was the first week of the 6 weeks. And if you see on that parameter for grading, grades may be taken that week, and they can be considered in calculating the final grade for the 5th 6 weeks only if the grade helps the student. So if the student failed a test or failed an assignment, you need to excuse that. or give them another opportunity if you could reach them to do better. I think a lot of campuses are just advising teachers to go ahead and wipe those grades out or excuse them. We don't want to take away something a student worked for. So if there are students that really did do well on a particular test or assignment, you can leave it in there. You just can't count it against a student who either didn't get to do it or did poorly on it. So that's March 2nd through the 6th. Then we went into spring break. If you gave any projects that were, going to be given a grade over spring break, obviously they can't turn anything in if it's physically a big project. If it's online and they didn't get it done, then we're not going to count it against them. And so again, if it helps the student, you may give it as part of the grading cycle, but you cannot give it if they didn't turn it in. It's not missing, it will be excused. Then we had March 16th through the 20th, and we had some amazing teachers already out there teaching. Still, many students were not connected though, and certainly the community had not been informed that we were doing school online, so we will not be giving any work, any grades for any work assigned during this time. Then the next week, we had distance learning, and that's where we are at the end of this week. No grades will be given for any work assigned during this time. I know a lot of you have been giving feedback in Google. Some of you have given quizzes, and that's great. Students can see where they are, but we know we don't have all of our students online. We are not going to give grades this week. And I want to say that with these 2 weeks, a lot of instruction has been going on. So next week, when we are free to give grades, we need to be very careful that we're not assessing some instruction that happened these last 2 weeks, because some students are not there. So we can't give a test on something that we taught this week, next week, and make it count, if that makes sense. So next week, when we start to reassign grades, we're going to look at grades towards the end of the week and what they're learning. What we're going to assess is what they learn next week. Hopefully we get more and more students on the path of success here. So got to call that team going. So next week is March 30th through the 24th. I can't believe that, of April. Those are distance learning, and grades may be assigned. The end of the 6th grading period is April 17th. And so after, after we get a little further down the road, we'll figure out what that's going to look like. I know we won't have a lot of grades in there, so I really want to challenge you to work with your PLCs to figure out which priority standards are essential for the next couple of weeks that we could measure students, and that those students could have multiple ways to show mastery and multiple opportunities to show mastery on those grades. So we want to do less this time. So maybe 1 to 2 grades a week at max is all we're going to be putting in the grade book. And if I were you, I would go with the 1. Okay, so we're going to do less is more and give students lots of opportunities to improve that 1 grade that week, or show mastery about that particular standard or TEK over time. So we just want to keep that in mind. Students may not be online. We don't want to give them a lot to catch up on when they do get back online. We want them to be able to show something though, because we want to be able to award them credit. So we have kind of both sides, right? We need to capture what they're learning so that we don't have students losing credit. At the same time, we just don't want to overwhelm our parents and our students in doing that. So that brings me to the next set of parameters down below on that page. And we're going to think about parameters for instruction, and this may be new for some of you, but the district has put some time guidelines on how much instruction can happen. It's 100 minutes per week. If you think about that, it is 20 minutes per day. That's it, to include your lectures online, to include if they have to attend office hours. Many of you are just giving them the option to do that, but we want to be cognizant of if they need the help, we want to include that in their time. And then certainly the time it takes for them to do any kind of assignment or assessment is included in that 100 minutes. And the reason for that is when you start thinking about a student having 7 classes a day, and then that's 700 minutes a week, and they also have 4 siblings, then they're sharing that and they don't really have time. We also know that some of our students are taking care of their siblings all day and then going to work at night, and we don't know where they have space for instruction to happen. And so we're really trying to limit the amount of work that teachers are assigning, because it's overwhelming at this point. That's what we're hearing, not across the board, but in many places. So when you work with your PLC to plan next week, we're going to really pull it back. You can give extra opportunities and things for them to practice. You can give them opportunities to visit with you that are outside the 100-minute guideline, and it's just a choice. But we do want to be mindful of the practices that we put in place that do not widen opportunity gaps. And so keep that in mind as you guys plan. Think about that. Be really sensitive to the fact that our parents are seeing these Google Classrooms for the first time, and they can't figure it out. It's so much. So if you do put extra assignments on there or extension assignments on your Google Classroom, make sure it's really clear that that's what that is, not part of something they have to do. So we want to keep in mind the 100-minute timeline, and we're going to assume that students don't have support at home, and that can look like a lot of things. Their parents may be working in the medical profession, long hours, and again, they don't have the kind of support that they would typically have sitting in our classes, or even typically sitting at home with their parents at night, because things are just so different right now. The other parameters for assessment and grading, every grade will be formative going and while we're in distance learning. So there are no summative grades. They will be all weighted the same, meaning that if you give a quiz, you can't give it double points. You have to give it, they're all weighted exactly the same way, and they will all be formative. This is different in that we used to only give students opportunities to do reteach, retest for summative grades. Now we're going to give them opportunities on all of these grades. And so if they don't do well on a quiz, you want to give them another opportunity. You may need to be creative in the way that the student does that. You can visit with them online, have them talk to you about what they know, what they understand, how to do a math problem, how to do a physics problem. We can measure in all kinds of ways. And so we want to try to meet our kids where they are. We're going to work again with that PLC to make sure that we're looking for mastery in the grade book. And so multiple opportunities, lots of soft deadlines. We have had students tell us, though, that it's really helpful when teachers tell them what they should be doing each day, rather than just saying, here's your work on Sunday, it's due on Friday. They don't know how to really divvy up their time. So possibly giving a calendar of, hey, you should be working on this today for about 20 minutes. It really is helping them feel like that's not so overwhelming. But then there are no hard deadlines, but then when things need to be turned in, they need to know that some way. So we just need to be flexible with kids and then work with them where they are. Northwest Vista and dual credit has some different guidelines, and I wanted to talk a little bit about that. We have dual credit and AP classes stacked. So for your dual credit students, they follow Northwest Vista's guidelines, and the dual credit teachers know what that is. And so they have to log in, they have to complete assignments, that's proof of their attendance. So you're gonna follow those guidelines for your dual credit students. AP students in your dual credit classes that are not dual credit, they need to go on this 100-minute rule. And so you need to make sure that you differentiate between those two groups like you've not done before as best you can. Our AP students are in really good hands because we followed the scope and sequences like the College Board suggested this year. And so they cut the content at 75%. So as long as you followed that scope and sequence, your students are going to be fine. You want to reinforce their writing skills and what they're going to be doing on FRQs. College Board has instructional videos that are posted. I think our AP students are at a real advantage anyway because we have such a great culture, we have great teachers and dedicated students, and so they still have you, unlike many other AP students across the nation, and they're going to be able to take a test in the comfort of their home. They just have to write. There's no multiple choice. It's going to be short. So AP teachers, please communicate to your students that this is a real opportunity to gain college credit like never before, even under these unusual circumstances. So keep in mind, even though we're all preparing for that big AP test and we want our students to be successful, you have to be careful with this 100-minute rule just because we're just in a different time. College Board has acknowledged that, and we're going to acknowledge that too. So I wanted to point that last part out. If you have any questions, we were able to meet virtually with all our coordinators last night. They're so great. They just jumped on board at the last minute at 7 o'clock, and we talked through a lot of this. And so they're going to give you a Google Doc, just a pull everything together so that we can watch it. And I'm sure if you have a question, then somebody else has a question too. So we're going to try to keep that centered in one place. But you can sure reach out to any of us to ask any questions about grading or instruction. And then the last part I want to say is that I want to give you permission to take it easy on yourself. Some of you are worried you're not doing enough, and from what we can tell, you're doing enough and more than enough. And so I want to give you permission to say it's okay to go outside, take a break, just like we're telling our students. Enjoy some time with your family and your pets, like we're seeing, and that's a good thing. And then take care of yourself. I know Dr. Berger is sending a message later. We really want you to take care of yourself. This is stressful for everyone, and you have families at home, and we want to acknowledge that. We know you're working hard, and we appreciate that all that you're doing to take care of our students, to keep them on track, to keep them learning and engaged in our community. So you guys have a great weekend, and thank you so much for attending this virtual all staff meeting. I guess that's what it is, from my daughter's bedroom. So I'll talk to you soon. Let us know if you have any questions. Bye.